remain conscious, upon leaving this the physical reality.
You said the sun responds to our actions. How does the sun how does the sun respond to our actions, and what actions may you be talking about?
Well, okay, so more specifically, what I'm speaking about is dance, chanting,
Chanting.
things like the sun, speaking to the sun,
Hmm.
all of us coming together as a collective and doing something with a specific intent.
Hmm.
And even with, if you look at the riots, that took place during the George Floyd situation, shortly after the riots took place, the sun flare started taking off, and it's because of the energy output that's being given off by way of the black bodies that are in a specific area. This is what they were speaking about when Albert Einstein was talking about black body radiation, because literally we change the charge density in a room. So when we step into a room, we change the charge density. And they understand in ancient Kemet that the stars in the cosmos is what charges the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is what charges our environment. Our environment then charges the body, and then the body charges the plasma. So our symbiotic relationship to the sun and the body is by way of plasma. But again, ionizing and electrifying the plasma, raising the voltage, is what's going to give you the capacity to manipulate the sun by way of certain actions that you do here in this physical reality. But it comes even greater when we all collectively come together with a specific intent to initiate a reaction, you see. But we have to set up the proper resonance. And I'm going to continue to keep saying that, because we got to understand that we have to begin to see the sun for what it really represents. So back to what I was speaking about as far as a gateway, the sun is a hyperdimensional gateway. When you say that, you set up the proper resonance, and that's through cosmic law, because cosmic law is in essence the capacity for literally you to take the wave and collapse it into a particle through consciousness. So when
Hmm.
we, again, look up at the sun and identify the sun for what it really represents, we set up that proper resonance to receive the highest quality of information from it, because again, the sun now sees something outside of its own existence that it can refer back to.
So perception is resonance then.
Perception sets up the resonance.
Sets up.
Sets up the resonance.
So by calling the sun a hyperdimensional gateway, you're changing your perception. So when you change your perception, you change the resonance.
You change the resonance, because when you perceive it to be completely different, now there's a new visual in the mind based on a
Yeah.
new perception. The brain doesn't know any different. The brain doesn't know if it's looking at a sun, if it's looking at, a car, but the brain
Hmm.
is crystal, it's a transducer. So based on the new visual that you have of the sun, now the brain serving as a crystal, which is piezoelectric, which
Hmm.
means piezoelectricity means, if a crystal is piezoelectric and you apply compression to it, it generates a charge. So the visual of it is now producing compression, which is generating a charge by way of the brain being piezoelectric because it's a crystal. That brain is transducing that new visual, which is creating what you call a new neural network. So based on the new neural network that your brain has processed based on the new visual of the sun, the pineal gland is to be the middleman and to take that new neural network and convert it into what you call an endocrine output, which is a hormone. And
Hmm.
that information then is translated to the red blood cells, and then the red blood cells then translate that information to the heart and store it in there as a memory. You see, so it's a physiological process that takes place, but this happens at the speed of light. So that's what changes the chemistry in the body, is by way of looking at something for what it really represents. But again, this is why we had to be educated in a certain way to perceive life very limited, because they understand that once you can moderate something based on its initial meaning behind it, or based on what it really represents, that's what physiologically sets up the specific resonance in the body to allow you to communicate with it. It's no different than when Nikola Tesla was into. He understood that when you have two resonant coils on opposite ends of the spectrum, one over in China and then the other one over in California, once you initiate a reaction to one of the resonant coils by way of alternating current, that's going to create a reaction or an effect, and generate power on the other one clear across the other side of the world. But it's instantaneous. That means it happens at the speed of light, or quicker than the speed of light. So that's why it's important to allow the body to be the highest form of technology that it's supposed to be, because once you acquiesce to a higher level of living by way of treating the body like an electrical circuit, this is what allows you to set up the proper resonance to have that, that symbiotic relationship to the universe. So everything is based on perception, and that's what they spoke about. But again, we got to begin to perceive reality how our ancestors looked at reality, and that's how you set up that communication and that relationship.
I think I was reading Joe Dispenza, and he was talking about how the pineal gland is piezoelectric. I think is that how you say piezoelectric?
Piezo or piezoelectric, right?
Piezoelectric, and to apply to stimulate it, you like under your under the for dudes like under your nuts, like when you lift that area. I think what they call it Kegel exercises. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he's saying when you do that, you stimulate the pineal. You ever heard of that? You
I
know
mean,
anything about that?
I have.
Like you just keep raising it, and he said Montauk Chia talks about that in his book. Um, to do those Kegel. Anybody know what is that called? Is that called Kegel? What is that called when you like under your scrotum and you like the Montauk Chi used to talk about you like you exercise it like up and like what is that called, yo? Does
Yeah.
anybody? I know y'all smart in the chat. If y'all know, yeah, it pushes the spinal fluid into the pineal. Yeah, that's what it's
Yeah.
Kegels. Yes, Kegels. Yeah. So it's called Kegels. Is there any truth to that? Talk to me about that, brother. If you know
Um,
anything about that.
well, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. Um, you know, yeah, they say basically when you raise that, I can't remember the specific name that they give it, but it's a part of the body basically where through the inhale, you raise the cerebral spinal fluid up and then you bring it back down through the exhale, but you got to be holding that part of the body by way of the Kegel exercise.
Mm,
Um, you know, with me, like it's a thing where it's a specific technique that you can dive into. In my opinion, honestly, I believe that there's other ways to stimulate
mm,
the level of cerebral spinal fluid up the spine, what they call the kundalini. But with us specifically, melanated people, we have a completely different structure when it comes to these specific techniques, and we have a different relationship with the environment. So when you're
mm,
talking about cerebral spinal fluid, you're talking about plasma. We have that in our brains, and
mm,
they understood, in Kemet, that plasma again was some of the most important substance to understand, because going back to the brain sits in a pool of plasma, right?
mm,
So with plasma being electrically conductive, with the brain sitting in a pool of plasma, even through the process of meditation, getting out of the Kegel for a minute, they understand when you generate that the Om sound. First, they understood that as the original sound of the electron, the Om, but they keyed in on that specific tone because they understood once you generate that tone, not only are you stimulating the glands in the brain, but you're also producing a disturbance within the plasma in the brain. Again, the brain sits in a pool of plasma that's electrically conductive. So when you generate that Om, what you're doing is creating standing waves in the plasma, or what they call in science electrical acoustic shock waves.
mm,
Same thing that stars do in the cosmos. And this is what they were speaking about as far as with Shu in ancient Kemet, because they understood that when you're outside and you meditate and you stimulate the plasma to create those standing waves literally become detectors of the 0 point. And when I say the 0 point, I'm talking about the physical medium that we exist in. So even if you were to look in Kemet, and I can't remember the specific name of the place, but it's an alleyway with a bunch of rams going down the alleyway, and up under the ram is Osiris, or
mm,
is Osiris. But with the ram itself, again, what they were talking about was the four ventricles in the brain being a crystal that sits in a pool of plasma that's electrically conductive. And by stimulating the plasma by way of the that's going to create standing waves, which then become a detector of the 0 point. So literally what you're doing is you're pulling in energy from outside inward. and you're manipulating the electrostatic environment, which again they deified as Shu in ancient Kemet. So this is just a small technique that we can do in reference to meditating, that is outside of anything relative to the Kegel exercise. But with the
Alkibulan don't want to do them Kegel exercises, y'all. He like that. Ain't he like hell done. I hear you, brother. I hear you. I'm just letting you
you
know
know
what
what
I
I'm
read, man.
like I said,
I hear you, brother.
I understand it, but it's like we again come with a whole different disposition when it comes to the body. So we don't have to go to the greater extents, to allow us to, stimulate the pineal gland and the brain and things of that nature. We don't have to go to higher or, extreme extents to do that. People who have pheomelanin or, who are lacking in, in I guess a relative decent amount of melanin do have to go to those extent because melanin, of course, are pigment centers which process and decode electromagnetic radiation.
You
Uh,
you ever got into Montauk Chia's work at all? You ever resonated with his info?
I didn't. I know what you're talking about, but I haven't got into it yet. I
Okay.
know the guy who you spoke about in reference to what's his name?
Joe Dispenza?
Joe Dispenza, yeah, because he
Yeah.
speaks a lot about the pineal gland and the cerebral spinal fluid striking it. It when you apply mechanical stress to it, it goes through what you call a piezoelectric effect, which then produces charge, which is all true, which is all
Mm.
true. But again, at the same time, sun gazing stimulates the pineal gland. Going outside and putting your bare feet in the grass, leg workouts stimulate the pineal gland because the thighs is one of the few parts of the body that has a direct connection to the pineal gland. This is actually spoken on in the Bible in reference to I don't remember the specific verse, but it's in reference to when Jacob wrestled with God, and God
Mm.
grabbed Jacob by the thigh, and he seen God face to face and named the place the pineal. Right.
Mm.
What they're
Mm.
talking about is when bodybuilders even know this, when they work the legs out, that's one of the first parts of the body they work out because not only does it hold the upper body to where it's supposed to be, but also too it stimulates certain levels of hormones via the pituitary and pineal that allow the physical body or the upper body to basically have the same proportion as the lower body. You see,
I remember hearing brothers say that we not supposed to lift weights. It creates some type of fluid in our body. We supposed to do like nat calisthenics and shit like that. You know anything? I know you scientific. You know anything about that? Lifting weights. Damn.
lactic acid. No, is it
Lactic acid, right?
lactic
Yeah.
acid. Yeah. Um, you know, well, yeah, because we have what you call fast twitch muscles. People who are more of a European descent have slow twitch. So
Mm.
it's calisthenics is something that we naturally do. And to
Mm.
be quite honest, to answer your question, yeah, calisthenics is something that our body is more accustomed to doing because that's what we did naturally. Before there was any weights or anything like that, we were doing calisthenics and we were basically using the body as the weight to build up our physical body. So,
Mm.
lactic acid, of course, is part of the process, but you're breaking the body down and, things of that nature. In my opinion, bodybuilding came by way of vanity, the outer appearance. So when we're dealing with gladiators and we're dealing more with the Greeks and now we're getting into the battles at the Colosseums, etc., they would have to create a situation where their physical body was strong enough to compete, but we weren't looking at reality in a way where everything was competition, right? We again
Mm.
have a relationship with nature where everything is symbiotic. So naturally, we will build muscle through even jujitsu and certain techniques of grappling and things of that nature. It wasn't something to where again we had to take something outside of us and literally build our bodies with. We use nature to allow the body to acquiesce to a certain condition that then allowed us to perform, a certain way. So,
Indeed. What do you what's going to happen? We're talking about this. Is for before I ask that, is the 0 point field, that's the same thing as what we're talking about, the primordial waters of noon, same thing?
Yeah, so so the primordial waters of noon in the 0 point is the same thing. It's what they call in science the dielectric field. It's what they call counter space. It's what they call empty space, the space in between me and my phone, which is full of light, right? Light that we can't physically see. But in essence, that's the primordial waters. But the primordial waters has always been here, even prior to space. Because space comes by way of magnetism. When you lose, and what they'll call it this in science, but when